Good morning. Good morning. We're going to start the third town hall. Again, I'm Maria Picasso, the chair for the CLA Council. I will be moderating. Welcome here and welcome online. But today what we're going to do, the way we're going to set it up is I have an announcement. Halcyon Lawrence is going to talk to us for a few minutes about what's happening with regard to DEI. And then I'm going to ask the dean for comments, and then we're going to open it up for questions, either that I received online or what we ask in here. Okay, Halcyon.
Services. Nice one. Okay. Hi, good morning, everyone. So I have the opportunity. Let me introduce myself. I keep assuming that you know who I am. My name is Halcyon Lawrence. I am in the Department of English. I'm also this year serving as a Dean's Fellow for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So last 2 weeks ago, Friday on November 4th, I had the opportunity to attend the DEI summit that was hosted by the Office of OIIE. I never remember institutional equity. Is that correct?
Office of Institutional Inclusion.
Office of Institution. I should know that by now, but yeah. So be patient with me. I'm figuring it out. It was really interesting. It was a full day. I'm glad that I got an opportunity to attend. Aside from just in my capacity as the Dean's Fellow, I was able to attend because Chris, our Dean, was not able to be there that day. And it was a full day of activities. A couple of things that stood out I wanted to share about. We had keynote speakers, a student of ours, liberal arts, Rasul Wright, and I'm sure you've seen a couple of articles and maybe even news coverage of Rasul. He is a finalist in the Rhodes Scholar, and he's a history major, I believe, in secondary ed concentration. I thought it was a really interesting decision for YA to have a keynote as a student. It was one of those moments when I'm reminded why I do what I do, to be able to hear about Rasul's journey coming out of community college and just his journey through Towson to be able to do what he's able to do at this stage. Really very powerful speaker and just very uplifting talk. One of the things that struck me about the summit was just the large number of staff members who tuned up. That was very encouraging to see. And I think throughout the day, what I heard echoed from our staff and what's been resonating with me and I've been thinking a lot about is just sort of how hierarchy manifests itself in the institution and how staff see themselves within the institution. And so there were a couple of questions that spoke directly to issues of hierarchy at Towson. We got to hear from a panel as well, made up of a government representative, somebody from industry, an author, and a team faculty member. And they got an opportunity first. They addressed questions that the group had about how we navigate issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion across these different areas. We ended the day. One of the things that I found most useful was being able to hear from Iona Johnson, Steve Jones, and Vernon Hurt. I have asked Iona if she'd be willing to share with us her presentation. She was able to consolidate reports from across all of the colleges on what they are doing with regard to DEI initiatives. And it was just good to see that work is being done It was also good to see the different kinds of work was being done. And so I think it'd be an opportunity, it'd be really good if I could share that with our college, so you can, I think sometimes we feel like we're alone in the work, or maybe not doing enough, or wondering how others are navigating this space throughout the university. So I hope that Ionis will be able to share that with me, and then I'll work with Chris to make sure that that's shared with you. So feel free in the Q&A if there are questions that I can answer about that. I'll be able to do so. I also want to be able to share with you about a workshop. The last time we met, I mentioned that we are planning to have a workshop in January. We now have a date. It's going to be January 23rd. We think we want to be able to see that the 26th would be a possible snow day. I'm really hoping that's not the case. I'm not ready to think about snow, but we are going to do a morning session, something from 9 to 12. I had a really encouraging conversation with our team yesterday to be able to talk about how do we design this workshop to be inclusive. And so we are going to, we are designing it around a hybrid component where there's both in-person and online options for those who may not be able to attend in person or those who are comfortable doing so. And all people who just need the flexibility but really want to participate. So who can attend? I want to be able to say that this is open to everyone. That if you're interested, faculty and staff, this is not an event for students. We do have an active Dean's Student Advisory Council that we're working through separately. So this is a staff and faculty event. But of course, we can't accommodate everyone. So we are thinking about how, aside people indicating their interest, we are thinking about how we go through and make decisions about who can attend. But lodging your interest is going to be important to us because this may be and allow us to start thinking about this as one of many activities like this. So to do that, you're going to be getting a brief survey that comes from Sandra Lear and myself. By next week, I think it's going to be an opportunity for you to indicate interest in participating in the workshop. It's also going to be a survey that allows us to start planning for the workshop content. So Iona is interested in being able to have a sense of what our experiences have been in the college, what our perception is with regards to DEI work. And so that will allow us to sort of form the foundation of the discussions that we're going to have. So please look out for that. So I'm going to stop here. If there are specific questions that you do have about the workshop, please feel free to ask it in the Q&A time, and I'll be able to, I can't answer you at that stage, but we are still in the planning stage. And I know a couple of you have emailed and said, can I help plan? I will get back to you this week. The answer is yes. I want to be able to hear from folks as to what's going to be useful. So thank you so much for your interest. That's it.
Thank you, Halcyon.
Sure.
Now what we'll do is open it up for Dean's comments.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see people here bright and early. And before I say anything else, I want to thank Halcyon for the work that she has done, not only this semester, but beginning last year. And we see the importance of having someone in the Dean's office helping us to continue to develop our activities, efforts in diversity and inclusion. What Halcyon reported from the summit is very encouraging, and we should really look forward to the January workshop within the college. I'll add that the reason we can't accommodate probably everybody has to do with logistics. And so we've been asked by Iona Johnson just to sort of help her out. The workshop has different components, and should we be pleasantly surprised and get a large number of faculty and staff who are interested. She won't be able to accommodate that. So we're abiding by Iona's guidance, and she also said that it's possible we can run another workshop or two as needed. Let's say we have a lot of people we can't accommodate in January, we can add to that later. So that's really, I think, helpful. I also want to thank you for coming this early in the morning. On a Wednesday, it could be any day. You've seen that we've had conversations with the dean at 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday. So I don't exactly remember where the ideas came for this, but I do know that we have received a lot of questions about when we time these kinds of all college events. And we're going to try to mix it up a bit this year because we're such a large college. We can't really find one time that works for everybody. It was hard for us to find one time that worked for a lot of people. So we may never have an ideal time for everyone, but these are recorded. People can access them through the recordings. And I think that's helpful. So I want to give you a few updates about the College Council and the committees. And I'll begin with a question that came to the College Council earlier in the semester and had to do with communication. How is communication shared at the university within the college? And the College Council discussed this. And I would say it's a discussion and conversation that needs to continue, but I explained a few things. First of all, the expectation is that everyone who attends, who is a member of the College Council or any of the committees, has an obligation to go back to their departments and share. There are some exceptions. From PTR committee, that's an exception. The elections committee is not an exception, but they don't meet every month. It's a very short period of time that they're working. Curriculum committee, well, you receive that communication in various forms because of the decisions that are made and the processes in approving new courses and changes to the curriculum or new programs. But while everyone on those committees should go back and share that information, and the chairs have assured me that they have a mechanism for doing that, either in department meetings or in written form. The committee members, the council members are also obligated to come back and share feedback with the council and the committees. So that flow of communication is everyone's responsibility, okay? And that's important to remember. That has to be maintained by us as a whole. It can't be maintained by chair of a committee or chair of the council. That's just not the way it should work. And feedback is very important to us in those meetings. And we've spent a lot of time considering feedback. That doesn't mean every department has feedback every month, but there's always feedback. So we want to make sure the communication flow goes every direction. As you know, the dean's office shares high-level communication with the whole college. And you might wonder what that means. I'll give a recent example, but there are other examples too. Last week, you all received an email message about the Democracy Today Committee's selection of a common college reading for the spring semester. And so that was sent to everyone, faculty and staff, administrative and assistants included in that. So we also have town halls, right? For that group of people to come if they can and to participate in the communication flow that way. Every month there is a conversations with the dean. It's another opportunity. So this year or this semester, it's been on Friday mornings, and we have had a very loyal, dedicated group. It's not always the same group of people come to those. Now, this year I have decided that we will focus on research because as we transition to R2, it's important that all of us be reminded and new people be reminded or be made aware of what opportunities and supports there are at the university. So the first month we had Nancy Dufault come and present, and I shared, I don't know if I shared her slides, I think I did with everyone in the college. Last week we had Patricia Westerman come to talk, and I haven't yet received her presentation. Once I do, I'll share that with you too. But it's very useful also to me, because I'm learning still about some of the opportunities. We have a lot of opportunities and supports at the university before anyone even goes out to ask for money externally. You can do that. You don't have to take advantage of what we have here, but especially for new faculty or faculty who are becoming re-engaged in their research, I think this is really important. So there'll be, that's another form of communication. Then on Friday, or I should say every month, I have a more limited opportunity to communicate with first, second, and third year faculty. All of these opportunities I started in my first year here when we were online only. And I will say the first, second, third year faculty, meetings are voluntary. All of these are voluntary, but a certain core group tends to show up. And again, we try to have it at a time when no one or almost no one is teaching. Even though that's a small group of people, I think now it's about 12 individuals, maybe 15. We can't find just one time that works for everyone, unless we were to start maybe at 8 o'clock in the morning, which probably wouldn't work for most anyway. I want to say a few words. So that's communication. I want to say a few words about the work of the council and the committees. So the council and the committees are engaged in the work outlined in the Constitution and the bylaws. Those are posted on our webpage. The first year I was here, because of COVID, most of the work was very different, right? Because the whole institution was responding to all the restrictions of COVID, and things were changing rapidly, sometimes frequently, not because of the institution, but because of what was going on in the world with the virus. But that's an important starting point, right? We have to always start with what is the policy, what's the Constitution, what are the bylaws? And with the exception of PTRM, Curriculum Committee, and Elections Committee, these committees and the council have advisory functions. That's important to note. And some of the committees have begun to assign subgroups or work groups to focus on specific topics. So I'll give you a couple of examples. The college, and by the way, if you know all of this, I'm thrilled. That means you've been getting the communication you should be getting from your representatives to the council and the committees. But I'm still going to repeat them because they're worth noting. These are really good things. So the council has a subgroup working on the revision of the bylaws. It started last year. This year it continues to work on that, and it's a lot of work, but we're focusing on bits at a time, trying to be realistic about what we can achieve in an academic year. But it won't take more than this year and next year to complete that process. We're revising bylaws shouldn't take 5-10 years, because then you have to revise them all over before you ever institute them. The council is also working on the review of safety practices in the building, and they have a document that they produced that we've reviewed. Some of you may have heard about parts of it. So that's a work in process. That will be something that we revisit every year. But the basic document is a really great starting point, because we hadn't had something like that. And so as you notice different things in the building, when it has to do with safety practices, you might think it's the council, and very likely it is, working with Teresa and other people who are responsible for that. And then the council has worked on review of travel funding guides. So I asked the council to do that this year. And there are a number of reasons for this. To begin with, it's just part of the systematic review of all of the guidelines in the college. Any of you who have, I don't know if anyone here has sat on the college research committee, the one that reviews faculty applications once in the fall, once in the spring for funding. There's a link on our webpage. It's a long-standing practice in the college. What the committees found last year, the research committee members found the last 2 years, is that the guidelines were hard to interpret when it came to actual applications. And so they helped me revise them. I would say the primary concern was that the document was written almost entirely in passive voice. And so that left a lot uncertain. And we know from our teaching and how we work with students and try to help them write better, we prefer, probably most people prefer the active voice, and there's a reason for that. So the document, the travel funding guidelines in part will clean up lack of clarity. It will update a few things, correct a few things, but it will also help us gear up for this transition to R2. And as you know, I've increased the travel funding support this year, and then added another component for international travel. So it's all in line with that, the revision of these guidelines. I should also say accountability is something that I've asked the council to consider. And this has led to some discussion, and certainly there will be much more discussion. How we word accountability, how we frame it, varies. But we have to remember that these are state funds, they are not ours. We are given these funds to steward. And so we have to be held accountable, and we are held accountable, in fact, for all of our budget. So what I'm asking is to address accountability. This is not unusual when it comes to grants and funding, right? If you write a grant, you are asked to provide something afterwards. Evidence that you've used the money as you expected to, and if not, explanation of why. So what this will look like, we're not sure right now, but the council is working on that. The revision of our guidelines will also bring us in line with what other colleges at the university are already doing. We don't have to have the same levels of accountability. We don't have to require the same thing when it comes to accountability, but we need to have accountability in there. And of course, I've already mentioned, this is best practices for grants in any case. I want to move to the DEI committee. Halcyon gave you a report of a lot of the work that the committee is doing. But I want to just call out Sandra Lara as well, who is the chair of that committee. Sandra has, in the last year and this year, has really helped the committee to move forward, to focus its efforts, and to create realistic goals. Some people we know feel we're not moving fast enough. Other people feel we're moving too quickly. And some people feel we aren't moving at all. We're moving, okay? The important thing is we're moving in a common direction, but we're being intentional about it. What we're doing is building, constructing. If you remember, this happened just before I arrived. The colleges were asked, from what I understand, to create DEI strategic plans. I don't exactly know what it was called, but maybe that's what it was called. So those were created. COVID came. Now it's time to start to enact them and envision what should that look like. So the important thing is we keep moving forward, and we try to be consistent and goal-oriented in what we do. I want to say something about the CLA Technology Committee. So that's a committee that I'm less familiar with, in part, not in part, but largely because of the way it was scheduled. So it was scheduled in the past, at the same time or overlapping with the DEI committee. I chose to put my efforts initially in the DEI committee. Well, I asked that they separate those times so that I could actually have a little walking time to get between meetings. Last week, I talked to the committee and asked them to identify problems, needs, and possible solution across the areas of student learning, faculty, teaching, and scholarship. Where did I get those? From the bylaws. Again, going back to the bylaws. And so as we transition to an R2 institution, I also asked them, how can the committee provide guidance on common issues across the college? Not about focused issues in this department or focused in that, but things that impact us all. And keep in mind that faculty and staff and students all have different skill levels. Sometimes we assume, oh, this group of people is much more capable, and maybe not everyone in that group is. So I want them to keep in mind difference, but I also want them to keep in mind being strategic, goal-oriented, and pragmatic in what they can do. I want to give an example that I talked about with them. So the council and the committees are working as groups and sometimes creating documents, they're gathering documents, and they're trying to figure out, well, where do we keep the documents? There are multiple ways we can do that in a college, but what is the best practice? And so that's what I'm asking the council, the technology committee to do, to provide guidelines. It's not a mandate, but put some guidelines up. I was working with a group of faculty recently on a group writing document that we were writing as a group. And the faculty member who took charge of it was using Google Doc, okay, but wasn't familiar with it. In fact, in the end, we weren't really using Google Doc. We were working the way we've always probably worked. People sent the faculty member individual comments and recommendations, and the group didn't see it. And so that's not the same kind of group writing as when we can all have access in real time to the document. But we need some guidance, and I think if we had that guidance, that group of faculty would have just looked at it and probably moved forward much more quickly. It took us much longer. There's a greater possibility of error in the end. So I want the technology committee to be doing things like that. Okay, I want to move on now to a couple of other committees. They're informal committees associated with my initiatives, Democracy Today and Commemorative Moments. So you received that message last week that the committee picked George Packer's book, Last Best Hope, American Crisis and Renewal, as the common reading for the college in the spring. How did that come about? If you remember last spring, the committee organized monthly readings, right? Reading groups, and there were different excerpts or short articles that were discussed every month. The reading groups attracted a few people, not a lot, but the discussion was extraordinarily rich. And so after that, the committee discussed, debated, well, what could be a common reading for spring of 2023, and they decided on George Packer. There were other works they would have liked to include, can only do one at a time. So maybe we can do another one next year, or maybe something else will come into the mix. But in any case, the plan is February and March have one meeting each, and this will be across all constituencies in the college. So faculty, staff, administrative assistants, and students. So we're working on the details for that. And then, I'm going to ask you for something at the end of my comments and help with those details. The dates will be sent out probably in the next 2 weeks because the authors agreed to come to campus and have a conversation with the author. I reached out to him. And so now what we're doing is trying to figure out what works with his calendar, what works with ours. The idea is that he would come in April when we've already had 2 readings sessions on campus. Everyone will have a chance to read. But if that won't work with this calendar, we'll have to adjust that a little bit. As far as commemorative moments, so that's the main thing with Democracy Today. There's more, but that's the main thing. For commemorative moments, this is something that is really, again, moving forward and taking shape in a very concrete way. So by the way, you can look at the webpage and find links and much more information about both of them. But the commemorative moments calendar is on the webpage. And I want to point out that one of the moments, and when we say moments, we don't mean one day necessarily, right? It could be a month, is March. So in March, the Women's Studies program or department is celebrating 50 years of women's studies at Towson University. In fact, from what I understand from one of the founders of the program, who is on the Commemorative Moments Committee as a TERPA faculty member, we were probably the second university to have a women's studies program in the country. I mean, that's something to celebrate. So March 1st is one celebration, and so the Commemorative Moments will in various ways support that, but there are others in the planning that at the department level, and when those become available, you'll hear about it as well. But each month we are planning something different, and so you'll hear in general communications more about those as the details come. I want to share some good news. It refers back to something that Halcyon pointed out. So for the first time in the university's history, we have 2 Rhodes Scholar finalists, and both of them are CLA students, Rasul Wright and Roseda Barrientos Ariza. And so we're really pleased about that. And I am constantly advocating for the college on campus because we need to make sure we're always reminding people why the liberal arts are important. So if you read the TU Today story, you may have noticed, like I did right away, college was not mentioned. it was like these students just came from anywhere in the university. So they're going to be putting together another version of that article. They will mention the college and they'll have a quote for me as well. It's important if you notice like something like that, reach out to the person who wrote it, reach out to the office that communicated. I wasn't at the November 4th DEI Summit because I was at the annual conference of the Council of Colleges of Arts and Sciences, which I've been going to for about 10 years. And it's mostly for deans, it's for deans and associate deans. And I went to a pre-conference workshop entitled Marketing the Liberal Arts. We are in the state of Maryland very fortunate that we can actually think about marketing the liberal arts using the phrase liberal arts. There are many people there from red states where the legislatures are in their curriculum and they are saying, can't use the word liberal. Got to take that off your college, take it off your program because it's progressive. It's a democratic political statement. It isn't. That's what we have to make sure everyone knows, not only outside the world, in the world, but on campus too. The campus we're probably fine, but we need to tell everybody every opportunity we get why we're important, right? R2 will no doubtedly raise a lot of focus on the sciences because that's where a lot of big grant funding comes from. But we know our college also brings in grant money, right? You saw that in my notes that I sent around for last month's town hall. So we, as ambassadors of the college, should constantly be showing, reminding people why the liberal arts are important in this transition to R2. The final thing is actually something I want to ask you and open it up to you. And that is, I referred earlier to outreach in a vague way, but the council and the various committees are trying to figure out how do we reach different constituencies in the college when we want to inform them of an event or inform them of anything. And so the council and different committees have talked about the different audiences. So we have students on many of these committees and on the council. And one of the students on the council has reminded us that students, we know this, right? Don't read email and they don't read new websites and they don't look at newsletters. So what do they look at? Of course, social media. So that's something we really need to pay attention to. Text they probably do, but that's harder to get them to reach them through text. But then we know that faculty, right, and staff, administrative assistants probably do look at the website and probably do read newsletters. So what that means is our job is much more complicated and work intensive. So we need to have different ways of communicating. No one has an answer that, will satisfy everything, but I put it out to you for ideas. And we don't have to spend, a lot of time on it today, but you should share those ideas with Maria to begin with, because she will gather them. And then if you remember, our committees are they're working under the auspices, generally speaking, of the council. So then she can share with the other chairs. But I leave you with that. If you want to make some recommendations about how we can do outreach better. And then, of course, any questions? Is it question and answer time?
Question and answer time.
Okay. Did everyone hear me? I've been told that I'm not loud enough at these. I think you heard me, right? Thanks, Teresa.
I have a suggestion about, I missed the very beginning. Sorry, Halcyon, but I was at the DI conference and Rasul's keynote was so inspirational, and I think if he would be willing, I know they specifically didn't record that session because they wanted people to feel like it was a safe space, but if he would be willing to be recorded, giving that talk and put that on the college's website, I think that would be a wonderful thing in terms of getting the word out about CLA and having two Rhodes Scholar finalists, which is amazing, but it was so inspirational, and that hearing from students is certainly the best way to get the word out, I think. It's just a suggestion.
It's a great idea. That is, and now that you mention that, I should say that at the convocation at the beginning of the academic year for new students, Benjamin Zychek from history was the faculty speaker, and I asked him for a copy of his speech, which I should review and make sure he allows me to share. I could also put that up. I suppose we could find the clip of the video. I assume there's a video, but I found it really inspiring. And I think for many faculty it would be inspiring, but also for students, for alumni. I didn't mention alumni as a particular constituency, but our alumni are engaged, okay? And that means Francis and I are working very hard to engage more alumni who, for various reasons, weren't engaged before, or COVID got in the way and they sort of, everyone was busy with other things. So alumni is another constituency we need to think about. And so I would see Rasul's speech, for example, or Ben's speech and convocation as being inspiring to alumni. Alumni are also very interested in liberal arts. So my advisory council that I created, and we had our first business meeting in October. It consists right now only of alumni. I'm meeting with people who aren't alumni, but so far no one has yet to accept. They're kind of in limbo right now. They're pending. But when we met, I gave them a little assignment before we met, and it was, how would you sell the liberal arts to a 17-year-old prospective student and then their parents? And then we broke into work groups. Karen was there, so she can attest this. It was a very animated conversation. They were excited. They come from different professions, different majors in the college. It's a diverse group in that sense and otherwise. In fact, they were so animated, we ran over a little bit. It was on homecoming Saturday, so we had to eventually cut it because some of them were going to be to the game. But in any case, alumni also feel that need to get, to raise the public understanding about the value of liberal arts. Someone who I'm still waiting, I wrote to him again yesterday, I'm waiting for him to say yes. Someone in the corporate world locally works at a tech company and he's the chief creative officer, I believe is his title. He got his bachelor's degree at a different institution in religion and religious studies and I want to say anthropology, but has worked in the tech industry since. He has a master's degree in computer science from our university and a PBC from sciences as well. When I met him, he told me, I only want to hire liberal arts speakers. And he explained why, for all the reasons we can imagine. I was really excited about them. Of course, I said, well, you have to join our council because you have access to all these students. But the world seems to know, the leaders in the world seems to know the value of liberal arts, but for various reasons, we seem to think that we're under siege because we are, right? In many states we aren't here. So we need to elevate our image and public perception. And we have a great place to start doing that in Maryland. It sounded a little bit like Wes Moore, if you heard him on the news hour last night, but I think he was right about Maryland. Yes.
I also think, people having minors in the liberal arts area is also a great value. So if somebody is a science person, I think that, we could also publicize the minor aspect. I mean, you don't have to be getting your major in College of Liberal Arts to enjoy and get the benefit of having a minor in something that you're passionate about and that you enjoy. So, I think that's also a way to bring more people awareness of the value of having a liberal arts education, even if it is a minor.
Thank you, Diane. That's a really important point. And that there are plenty of people from other colleges, plenty of students who minor here and double major, but minor I think is really important. I'm glad you raised that. We do have a joint degree program with joint major between environmental studies and geography and environmental science in Fisher College. We're working on more of those. They're not common at this university. So there is always some level of conversation among deans and the provost office about having more of those programs happen. but they aren't moving forward for whatever reason. So in the summertime, I did arrange a lunch with Tim Sullivan. Sadly, it was, the last time I really had a substantive conversation with him. And then with Mike Corsi, who's chair of the political science department in this college, and then Matt Chambers from the provost's office, to talk about how we can put together some sort of collaboration between Department of Economics and political science in terms of maybe policy studies and so forth. Last year, I had a number of students approach me. When I go to events, I often talk to students if there's a reception. It's a great opportunity, but they also emailed me or set up an appointment to talk to me. They wanted to know why we don't have public policy here, okay, as a major. So I broached that with Matt in the provost's office. He said, well, he gave me some history. So that's how that lunch came. We need to do also more collaboration with other colleges. There are ways to have those collaborations without having to go through a cumbersome external approval process, but I'm not opposed to the external process either. Okay? Sometimes things are worth taking the time and effort that would require.
So let me ask you, there were some questions from the last town hall that were unanswered. And I just wanted to kind of make a general statement about the anonymous questions, that some of the questions are questions that can be answered by the dean. Sometimes I'll get questions that are not dean related questions. They're more department related questions, or they may be Senate related questions. So some questions will go back to the provost that weren't answered, but some questions still remain that I wanted to just present to you. One of the questions was that some colleges are conducting all job searches virtually given pandemic safety. Is this something that will be done at a college level? If at CLA, or is it a university issue?
So I don't think that's, I don't know where that's coming from. Provost has made it clear with the deans that we should do all preliminary interviews, your semifinalist list virtually. And the reason for that is it's really not an equitable process if your professional organization still conducts interviews at a conference, right? And she's given her own experience from that. I mean, I think I can do it. Many people in this room can too. Many people are at a very financially vulnerable point when they go on the job market for an academic position. They may still be a PhD student, but if not, their income is more restricted. And so what that does is it favors people who somehow can gather the resources to go to the conference and have maybe only one preliminary interview, or maybe 3 or 4, with no guarantee that it will lead to on-campus interview. So what the provost has told the deans is those interviews should be done virtually, and we shouldn't be supporting anyone to go to conferences to have those. There may be some exceptions to that, but there aren't in this college. And I am following the provost's line on that, and I agree with that. That is much more equitable. In terms of the finalist interviews, she's also held firm there on campus. Now, if COVID gets in the way again, should it emerge or something else like COVID, then we readjust. But she has told the deans finalist interviews are on campus. So last year, or earlier this year, when we were bringing finalists in, what did that mean? That meant some of the searches were delayed because we had candidates who got sick. And sometimes, I think in one search, we had 2 candidates get sick. So you had to wait the waiting period, then reschedule, and then do the same with the second candidate. And it can not only prolong, but sometimes it could lead to losing candidates like that you would really want to hire. So we work with the realities of the world, but that's what the provost has said, and that's what we follow.
Okay. If there are no other questions from the audience,
Are there any
anybody have
first-
questions here?
Or some birthday,
Oh, you did, okay. I'm a monitor,
Ask it.
ask it.
Okay, I arrived late, but I need to ask, has absenteeism and lack of submission of work been addressed? And so the professor would like you to address absenteeism and Latin listening before.
So I haven't addressed it today. There's not a whole lot to update since the provost spoke about it last month. I know that there are a number of initiatives that are in the provost's office, vice president for enrollment management, who's in charge of admissions as well and retention. He is working on it. We have met with him in the college. My understanding is that we have a lot of anecdotal evidence, but we don't have more than that. So I ask people, I ask faculty members, chairs regularly about it. It's a mixed bag. I thought maybe it had to, was more concentrated in our core courses because we teach so many core courses and those students aren't all ours. We know that. Didn't seem like, when I ask faculty, it didn't seem like it's just core, it doesn't seem like it's under level. I thought upper levels, we would see less absenteeism. Some faculty will say, no, the students are coming, there's no difference from the past. Others will say it's about 50%. So I don't know how we assess this. Boyd Bradshaw, who is that vice president, is working on it. I don't think we have a definitive answer. One thing we will look at carefully is final grades, but that doesn't tell the whole story. And we'll also look at re-enrollments. I know that's important. Tomorrow morning is Provost Council, and I imagine we'll hear more about that tomorrow. Boyd Bradshaw and Robert Karp visited the chair's leadership meeting the last time we met 2 weeks ago. And so, I again was at that conference. I didn't attend, but my understanding is they found that our faculty were using SSC, which is really critical to maintaining communication with students, but at different levels. I talked to Robert Karp about this one-to-one yesterday, and he said, our college probably in terms of percentage of faculty using SSC is the highest in the university. We're also the largest, and that's important. But he said, faculty are using it at different levels. So some are just kind of looking and dabbling, others are using all of the features, which includes texting students, and students respond more to text than emails. So it's a conversation that needs to be continued, but I have no additional updates.
Any other questions? I know there's another one, Teresa. Do you want to ask it? Okay.
That are off somewhere.
Thank you for that. Okay, so this is the question. The dean argues that accountability is needed for travel funds because they're grants. We're already required to give documentation of travel for reimbursement of funding. Also, travel funds are not grants. They're yearly or twice a year funding for research travel that we're required to do. Why should we have to provide more proof of using these funds? And why isn't the focus of the dean on how long it takes for faculty to get reimbursed?
Thanks for that question. If I conflated the two, I didn't mean to. I thought it was pretty clear. These are not grants, but I have to remind everyone, we will follow similar practices to what you would expect if you get a grant, even from the dean's office, okay? So if you get a grant from the dean's office, you're expected to write a little report. It's not very long, it's short. Some of the other colleges are asked for much more. They ask for proof of submission to a journal for publication, a peer-reviewed journal, or for a book if you're working on a project where you have a chapter in a book that you're contracted to write. So that is not unreasonable to ask in an academic environment. I approve all of the travel requests, and when they come through beforehand as authorizations, I look to see what documentation people have submitted. And what people generally submit is the conference program, if it's available, and a page listing their paper. Or level of participation. Sometimes, I guess you could serve as a discussant. I don't remember. I'm remembering most only papers. But also, they will, if that's not available, they'll provide an email from whoever's organizing either the conference or the panel saying your paper has been accepted. So that's important. Beyond that, I don't know what happens. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of accountability. One of the issues brought up at the council was some people will go to maybe use the money to go to 3 different conferences and present 3 different papers 1 month apart. So how will we work in accountability? I don't know. That's what I'm asking the council to do. So if you're concerned about this, talk to your representative on the council. Because your representatives are working on this, and then when they come up with the document, we'll discuss it as a group. And that will be the basis for reforms of the travel policy. This is really something for you to take, feel like you have some say in, because you do. But it's your right, and it's also your obligation to engage and to recommend, talk to your council member.
I was just gonna add to that, that's exactly what the council is doing right now. And so council members have been going back to departments, or should be going back to departments and asking for their input, because we are working on coming up with a document, so.
And as for the reimbursements, well, I personally feel those as well. I won't get into details, but I had a reimbursement that took me at least a month to get, and I finally got it yesterday, and I haven't gotten the answer yet. How long do these take? I mean, I know that some delay is has to do with stratus and mistakes are made. I had made a mistake on something, fine. I don't hold anyone accountable for not paying me. But once it's done, how long does that take? I don't know. My understanding, just again, anecdotally, it takes quite a while, longer than it did in the past. So I am raising that question. The deans have met with the stratus people, the people who are implementing stratus at the university. We may meet again as a group with them, and we express these ideas. So it's very important to hear what whoever submitted that. It's very important for me to hear that, because I won't know otherwise. I only know my own personal experience, which sounds like it's similar to other people's.
Yeah, I have one more question that we didn't answer from the last, and actually it was answered in some ways by the provost, but I think it could be also answered by the dean, and it may be longer than we have. But what's the process of getting all faculty to a 3-3? Some faculty were hired under the expectation that they'll be primarily that we are primarily a teaching institution, so their faculty profile might be teaching intensive rather than research intensive. How will changing the scholarship expectations affect them? So kind of 2 questions.
Yeah, and just, I don't answer both, just remind me. So the provost addressed this last month, but she's addressed this multiple times in the last year and a half. And my understanding, how I've heard her talk, it hasn't really changed. So let's keep in mind this, that as we transition to R2 university, faculty, not brand new faculty that we hired to start this year, last year, or for next year, but faculty who have been here already. Even if you're on the tenure track, it's up to you individually to decide. If you want to stay with 3-4, you stay with it. You have to declare that to the chair. Process was unfolding last year because at the university level, it hadn't been, there's no process, and a lot of the sort of details were not set sort of until the end of the semester, which is way too late to plan for this year, but we still managed to get a lot of people to 3-3. So it is to work with your chair right now. And then the chair collects that information and provides it to me. I look through and read everything and say yes or no. I didn't say no to any of the requests for this year. I don't anticipate saying no to many requests. Because that kind of decision-making is best at the department level, and I trust that it's being done properly. So if you want to stay on a 3-4, anyone wants to stay on a 3-4, that's fine. You're still doing 100% of your work. If someone goes to a 3-3, they're still doing 100%, as the provost pointed out last month. It's just differently, right? And in the departments, it is going to be up to you to establish the cultures for this, so that people who want to remain a little bit more focused on teaching are not valued less than people who move over to the 3-3. And by the way, we can go back and forth between 3-3 and 3-4, not during the year, but every year. That process, that part of the process was not clear from the provost's office last year. It's clear now. Could it change? Yes. I think this is something that is developing, evolving still. And the deans are trying to respond to it as best as they can. So we have to value everybody. I am gonna ask the chairs in the spring semester to look at our workload document. Other colleges are doing it in light of this change. And so there'll be much more information about that, but we have to make sure we value everybody. And let's face it, some people are fantastic in the classroom. And if they want to keep the 3-4, fine. If they're fantastic and want to do more, put more emphasis on research, fine, they're not going to become less fantastic in the classroom. What I've told every search committee is that when we look at candidates, we have to look at candidates who can be excellent in both ways. We are not saying excellence in teaching is no longer a priority for us. It is. R1s, many R1s have shifted that model. When I was at my R1 as a student a long time ago, teaching didn't matter. I had the worst teachers. I don't think I had any good teachers. They were fantastic researchers and helped me that way. When I got my first job, I didn't know how to teach. I had no mentoring, no examples at the graduate level of how to teach well. So it's important that we maintain that excellence. Did I answer everything on that one?
Well, the second part of the question was how will changing scholarship expectations affect them? So I guess what 3-4 people.
Well, I mean, I think we'll probably we'll build off of what exists now, right? So we already have a model that works, so we don't need to, leave that behind or create something new at all. So I think we use the model we have as the basis. Probably won't change in most departments for 3-4 faculty member. Not all departments were able to satisfy the request to go to 3-3 because this year we were only able to do that if it was budget neutral. After those decisions were made, the cuts were announced, if you remember, and so it's been a challenging year that way. But we met the budget, so things are a little bit easier now, but still not what we had anticipated.
Well, we are at 9:57. Does anyone have a question?
Now, for those who are coming in by Zoom, I just want to say we have a pretty solid number of participants here in the room. You may not be able to see, so for me, that's very inspiring and encouraging. I don't know how many we have coming in by Zoom, but thank you for coming in. I'm very happy to see everybody. I'll sit down.
We have over 30 people. So I just want to thank everyone for coming either in person or online and remind people that December 2nd at 1:30, the president will be here for our 4th and final for this semester town hall. Thank you. Oh, wait.